Hey everyone, Julian here, hope you're all doing well and welcome back to another episode of Learning Flask. This is episode 14 and we're going to be sending/downloading files from a Flask application. So there's many use cases for this. Think, downloading reports, CSV files, images, PDFs, any kind of file. We can allow our users to go to a URL and download them from our Flask app, and it's really, really simple. So let's jump straight in and get started. As always, I do have a text-based version of this tutorial. I will chuck a link in the description. And we've got the Flask development server running on localhost, and we've got terminal. So let's go ahead and Flask run. You can see here we are in the development environment. And we've got our editor open. So how do we download files with Flask? First things first, I want to show you that I've gone ahead and created some directories here. So from the static directory, I've created a new directory called client. And inside of client, I've got a CSV, IMG, PDF, and reports directory. So what I'm doing here is essentially this client directory inside static, I want to hold any file that I want to make available for users to download. So it just keeps things nice and separated and clear of where we want to put our files that we want users to be able to download. So in CSV, I've got 2 CSV files. In IMG, I've got 2 images. In PDF, I've got 2 PDFs. And in reports, I've gone ahead and created this kind of nested structure here. So in reports, we've got 2017, 18 and 19, and in each of these they'll contain the same thing, just a January and February, and in each January and February it's got a sales directory which has got a sales report. So you can imagine if you've got some kind of business application which maybe you want to generate some reports in a background task, we're going to be covering that shortly, so stick around for that. You may want to just dump these files into these directories and then allow your whole business network to be able to download them by just going to a URL. So I will go ahead and show you how to do that shortly. So let's go ahead and get started. And you can see here I am in a Flask application. This is the one we've been using throughout this series, but it really doesn't matter. You can just go ahead and start a new one or work it into your own and just follow along. So we need to import a few things to work with sending files. So from Flask, import. And now really the only thing you do need to import is send from directory. But I'm also going to go ahead and import abort. And I'll show you how to use abort and send directory shortly. So let's go ahead and create a route. So the first route I want to create, I want users to be able to go to a URL and enter a name of an image. And then as soon as they hit that URL, it's going to download the image. And if the image doesn't exist, I want it to throw a 404 error, file not found. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to call it get image / and then we want to create a variable in the URL. So we use the 2 opposing arrows, and I'm just going to call this image name, just like so. So let's go ahead and create the function. So get image, and that is also going to take the image name. But before we go any further, I want to quickly cover off something that I don't think we've touched on before, which is variable rules. So variable rules are a way of creating a converter in the URL. So if you were to pass a string in here, the converter is going to convert it and make sure it's a string. And if it's an integer, it will make sure that it's converted into an integer type. And there's a few more, and what I think I'll do is just create a doc string here and just list them out. So we've got string, we've got int, we've got float, we've got path, and we've got UUID. So these are the 5 converters, and the way we use them is by just prepending it to the variable that we're expecting. So for example here, we're expecting some kind of image name, which we want to be a string. So by default, if I was to leave that blank, it would be a string by default. But you can explicitly say that would be converted into the type of string. And I think what I'll do, just to illustrate this, is print image name, and for now I'll just return thanks. So if we go to our get image, and I'll just chuck my name in there for now. Oh, what have I done? From Flask inspected an indented block. Okay, I don't know what happened there. Anyway, you can see here, so it's printed our variable there, Julian. And now if I go and just change that to print the type of image name, you can see there it prints the class of string. So what if we were to change that to an integer? Go and refresh. We get Flask is throwing an error, and that's because the converter type hasn't worked. You know, it can't convert my name Julian into an integer. But if we were to put 1, 2, 3, there we go, that returns successfully, and there we get the class of int. So again, if we were to change that to float, and then let's do the same, we get an error. But if we then put a decimal point in there we go, that's worked, and we get the class of float. Now what about path? So let's go ahead and change that to path, and let's actually provide a path here. So my/image image.jpg. You can see here it's a string, and we don't get any errors. That works absolutely fine. And in fact, if below that I go ahead and print image name, you can see here that it actually prints the string with all of the slashes. So logic, you know, if you weren't aware of these converter types, you would have thought here that's going to throw some kind of error because we haven't coded a route in our app to accept, you know, get image /something/something/something, right? But because we've added this path converter here, Flask knows to expect a path coming in after get image. So very, very useful, and we'll use that in our example shortly when we go ahead and drill into our nested reports here. We're going to use this path variable, and the UUID is just a so for an example of a UUID, I'll just go ahead and copy one in here. I'll paste that in, and you can see that worked. And a UUID is just a type of identifier that's used across the web. So, and you can see it is actually its own class here. So they're the different converter types that you can use, and they are very, very useful. So I'm going to go ahead and, in fact, we can just leave that there for now. So I just want a plain and simple image name. So I'm going to leave that as image name because I don't want them to provide a path. I just want an image name. So next thing I want to do before we actually go ahead and start sending any files is I want to add the this image directory here to our app config. So app config, and I'm going to call this client images, and then I'm going to give it a path to this directory. So I'm hard coding in a trusted base directory into our app configuration. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm just going to stop the app. I'm going to cd into app static client img, and then I'm going to pwd to print the working directory. So this here is going to give me a full path to my trusted directory. Go ahead and paste that in. Now, if you're running this in production, I would suggest do this in your app config somewhere. So on your development server, put the path in. On your production one, put the path in on your server. So it's going to be, you're likely going to have two different paths to that directory depending on whether you're running locally or whether you're running in production. So go ahead and add that to your app config, but for now I'm just going to add it here in our views. So just like so. So we've got our directory. We've got a file name coming in from the URL. So how do we go about returning it? So let's go ahead and close this so we've got a little more space. So what I'm going to do is create a try and accept block. I want to try and get the image. If the image doesn't exist, I want to throw a 404 error saying that that file doesn't exist. So let's do try, let's do accept, and we're going to use the file not found error handler here. And this is where we use abort, and abort takes an HTTP status code. So I'm going to give it a 404. So what do we want to try and do? Well, we want to try and return send from directory. Now, send from directory takes a few arguments. It first takes a directory of where to look, and because we've got that in our app config, I'm going to pass that in. The next thing it takes is a file name, and I'm going to give it the image name because that's the name of the file coming in from the URL. And then it also takes a third argument, and I'll just create a bit more space here so we don't run out of lines. And then the third argument it takes is as attachment, and that takes true or false. So in fact, what I think I'll do is set that to false first so you can see what happens. So we've got the base directory, we've got the file name, and we've got as attachment, which can either be true or false. And there are a few other arguments that you can provide, and I'll chuck a link to the Flask docs in the description box below. So let's go ahead, and we know if we look at our images here, we've got 001 and 002.jpg. So get image / 001.jpg, and that's gone ahead and downloaded it, which I didn't actually want because we've got as attachment set to false. I wonder if the browser's doing some kind of caching here. So I'm going to go ahead and open the developer tools. So 001.jpg. Oh, it's because we're not running our app. How silly. There we go, make sure in the right directory, Flask run, schoolboy error. So let's go ahead and as attachment is false, reload, and there we go. It's not downloading as an attachment, it's just showing it in the browser. But if we go ahead and change that to true, this is going to allow our users to download the file. So there we go, downloaded the file, and we've got ourselves a nice image there. So that's how simple it is to send files. We use a send from directory, we give it the base directory, we give it the file name, and we declare if we want it as an attachment or not. So let's just do one more example for our CSV files. So we'll just change this to get CSV, and we'll give it a file name, and that's going to also take file name in the function. Change this to get CSV. So we should go ahead and add a CSV directory into our app config. So I'm going to paste that down, change this to client CSV, change the folder to also be CSV, go ahead and grab that, and it's literally exactly the same apart from image name. We're going to change to file name, and we want as attachment. So we can go ahead and save that, and it's going to work in the exact same way. In fact, what do we call our CSV files? We've got salesreport.csv and users.csv. So we can go ahead and get csv/users.csv, and there we go, that's downloaded our CSV file, and you can see there we've got some examples of our users. So you can imagine this would be really useful if you are generating reports and you want to be able to let people download them instantly just by going to a URL. So what about our nested structure here in reports? We've got lots of different options here. You could, provide an individual route to have, for each month, but why don't we let our users just provide their own path? So first things first, let's go ahead and create a new entry in our app config called client reports. And we'll change this to reports because that is our base trusted directory for client reports. And we'll go ahead and, in fact, I can just copy this down. We're only going to change a few things. So we'll call this get report, and then we'll change this to path, and we'll also use one of the converters. So we'll use the path converter because you've seen that in action. You know that if we provide a path here, this variable path is going to be a string path, and then we can look up that path and return whatever file they want to provide. So we want to change client CSV to client reports because this is our base directory here, and the file name I'm going to also change that to path, and as attachment we'll leave to true because we want our users to be able to download these files. So effectively we've got kind of this dynamic system of routes that we've created just by adding the path converter, which is really interesting. So this saves us potentially a hell of a lot of work and creating a get report /2017/Feb/sales. Think if you've got a structure here with a crazy amount of subdirectories and files and all sorts of different content here that you want your users to be able to access. I mean, fair enough, you could do it using some kind of database and create quite an elaborate system that is probably, it's just as effective as doing what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and use this. So let's quickly check our path. We'll go to 2017 Feb sales and sales report.csv. So let me make sure I've done everything right here. Yep, that looks fine. So let's go ahead and go to 2017/Feb/sales/sales report. So get report /2017/Feb/sales/sales report.csv. Oh, I didn't change the function name. Get report. There we go. So let's go ahead and reload, and there we go. We get our sales report, and sales report is empty. I didn't add anything there, but you can see that's let us download the file, and we provided a path. So for example, we want to maybe change this to 2018 or 2019. Go ahead and let's change this to 2019, and there we go. It's downloaded our sales report. So I hope you can see how useful using these converter types are in the URL. So really, really cool, super easy to create a dynamic system of URLs that lets your users go to a URL and download a file instantly. So that pretty much covers it for this one. Let me check my notes here to make sure I haven't missed anything out that I wanted to discuss in this episode. No, that's pretty much it. Another thing, you may see people importing send file from Flask, and it is very similar. Using send file is very similar to using send from directory. It's just not as secure. Flask does some things behind the scenes with with send from directory that makes it very secure. For example, using send file in place of send from directory doesn't do any kind of sanitizing of the file name or the path. So what that means is potentially someone could provide a malicious or unwanted path to a file, and they might end up going backwards into your server and downloading, config files, all sorts of files that you don't want ever to expose to your user. So I would definitely recommend using send from directory, providing a trusted directory using app config, and then using the file name arguments and providing names to files. So that pretty much wraps it up for this one. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found it useful. If you've got any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Feel free to subscribe if you're enjoying the series. I do have lots more coming. We've got a few more things to cover in the sort of Learning Flask series, and then we're going to move on to finally actually creating a brand new app from scratch with databases. We're going to use Redis, we're going to use background tasks, so we're going to be working with Celery and various other different really cool functionality of functions and features of different packages and applications, and tying them all together and creating something really interesting. We're then going to be actually deploying that application on, we're going to deploy it up to a virtual machine, we're going to deploy it on Google App Engine, on Heroku, all sorts of different ways to deploy our app. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and if you enjoyed the video, then feel free to click like. And I'm going to stop rambling now because I am rambling on, so I do apologise. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.